Welcome back to Stu Structures. I am Mark Stewart, your favorite Pharaoh equestrianologist. I haven't said that in a while. Those of you that have not seen some of my earlier videos, I had a friend that coined that term. Pharaoh being iron, equestrian being horse, and ologist the person that studies, I guess. So a Pharaoh equestrianologist. I kind of like the term, so I'm going to cling on to that and use it from time to time. But in any case, we're here to start another structure and give a last glimpse of the beanery, so stay tuned. Okay, so in this segment of Stu Structures, we're going to give you one last glimpse of the beanery and some final things that we've done to it to get it to a state that we're going to set it aside and begin work on the next building. The next building we are going to work on was the freight station that was in Grafton, West Virginia. It has a lot of odd brickwork and stuff in it, so we'll get into the pictures and things of how I came across the information that I have to build this building and how to proceed with getting a structure started like this, and see where we go from there. So let's just jump into all this.
The first thing we're going to do in this series is just go ahead and start putting this all together. Now, I did go ahead and decide to cut a platform, and there was just some used paneling from a house and some renovation work that was being done, and I cut this platform out so that it had the right triangle to set the building down on. Then I put this mat board, glued it to the top of it to give it a decent surface to paint and glue and work with as far as the building goes. Now, before I can mount the building, I need to take all these light wires from the lights above the doors and, tape them to the wall so that they're not hanging down in front of the doors and windows, and drill holes anywhere that there's floor for the wires to protrude down through. And then I set the building on that mat board and draw circles where I need to drill all these holes through that board so that they all line up with the holes where the wires are coming down from the building. And then once that's done, I just go ahead and put some Gorilla Glue on it and go ahead and mount the building on there. Now, I used weights, those heavy lead weights, to just hold this down. Gorilla Glue has an expanding quality to it, so I didn't want the building to move around. To my well, anyway, something that did happen was that the first building that we built on the very end did get a slight bit of separation. I just didn't notice it when I glued it down, and it's on there pretty permanently, and I didn't want to rip the mat board. So one of the joints, the joint on this side that's showing right here, actually has a little bit of separation where the brick of that two-story building meets the tower. So I'm going to have to come back in here and do a little bit of filler in that corner and just fix an error. I don't know why I didn't notice it when it was setting there, and I was setting everything up to glue, but I didn't. So, just a small error that I got to come back and fix. And moving on to a few other things to put together so I can glue these last hotel buildings down. The roof I had painted on this before and did the flashing on, but I wanted to come back and just use my felt tip marker and put the seams on the roof of that building there, and then glue all those buildings all together as one whole structure. Everything came together here really well. It sets good. Of course, the other roof has to be added on to it, but basically that's the whole back end of the whole hotel structure with the walkways and everything done. I'll have to put some base plates on these walkway supports when I get it glued on its final structure. But basically, this turned out really good. There's some black paint still to come back and touch up a little bit, and some shiny areas that need some flat put on it. But other than that, it all worked out well. And this is just a picture of that last piece going on the platform. And once I get good glue underneath of it, I use all these heavy lead weights to get everything, to where it'll all set nice and flat. I don't want anything moving around. And then I come back and put a little bit of texture on the platform. I want this to look more like concrete, although, you know, later on I just figured out, well, I should have just waited to put the texture in a little bit later and went ahead and painted it first. Now, another detail we're going to add on is this telephone pole and electrical service onto this end of the building. And you know, it's just something really simple, but it's just a detail thing that really adds a lot of oomph to the building. So, you know, I found a nice piece of wooden dowel to use and cut it to height I wanted, and I need to put some cross members on this, so I went ahead and found a piece of wood stock that would work for the two cross members at the top, and got all that painted and stained to where it looked, you know, semi-creosoted, dark reddish tone wood like most telephone poles do. And you know, once that's all dried and everything, then I can come back and glue the cross members on the pole. And then there's these two plastic supports that go underneath of them, and it's just getting all that on there. Now there's also the insulators that sit on top of those cross members once they're in place. So I come back and glue the insulators on top of those, and then, you know, I got to add some black paint onto the supports for the pole and everything. And once everything's painted, you get to this point here where, you know, the pole is pretty much finished and ready to mount in the platform. So I just, you know, got a drill bit that was the same size as the pole, drilled a hole, and then put that in place. And you can see here I started putting the electrical service onto the end of the building. I just stripped down some wires and took some real thin strands of the wire out, glued a little tiny plastic square on the one end, and then glued it in a couple different places up the side of the building to the insulators on the building, and then from there to the pole. Now, another thing we need to add on is just the few last little downspouts. The tower has a couple little short, odd bent pieces that have that are the downspouts that come off the tower roof, and they dump onto this lower roof, which goes into the gutters of this two-story building. So there's one on the front and the back of the tower, so I went ahead and bent those and painted them black, and then glued them on so that there are downspouts on that. Another thing we need to work on is the walkways, the upright supports that come out to the platform now that it's glued down, needs to have some steel plates where those I-beams would have connected and bolted down into the concrete. So I cut these 4 squares and put them underneath where the I-beams come down to, glue the I-beams to that, and then use some angle stock to you know, to go to both sides of that would have bolted the I-beam down to the flat plate on the bottom. And then, you know, this needs to be painted black, but that's one more thing out of the way. And remember, I had knocked the flag off of this flagpole, so, you know, I came back and re-glued the flag on there. The American flag, you know, being a veteran means a lot to me, so it's back on the building where it belongs. Now, another thing, there's a small wooden chest hinge top off of one of those small sheds off of one side of the building. So I came back and used some balsa wood and just built this little box, and then I cut some paper triangular type hinges and a handle and glued to the top of that, and then came back and painted and stained the wood and used a heavier black paint on the hinges and handle, and then glued that in place under this window where it's showing in one of the pictures that I have. I'm not sure what this was used for. Maybe back in the steam day they you know, kept oil cans or something in here. I'm not really sure, but it's there in one of the photos, so we added it in. I'm just going to give a pan here of the building as it stands at this point. Now I still have to go ahead and finish painting the concrete white, and you know, it needs to be toned down and some work done with it, adding a little more texture to it, but basically that's the whole structure done at this point. There's some parts where the wood and the brick don't meet really well, so I have to do just a little bit of filler in some areas so the building does not look like it's floating. But the majority, all the detail parts are in place. The lights will have to be wired in later on. I am a little disappointed in the brick sheet seams that you know, they show a little more than I would like on this structure. I don't like this brick from Walthers. The brick itself is okay, but seams and various things just, you know, they're not what they should be for as much as you pay for that kind of you know, brick sheet. Now, some other things that I just wanted to bring up are the byproducts of building a building of this size. I've went through 39 blades for my X-Acto knife during this build. You really can't build anything and have nice clean edges and cuts and stuff without changing your blade really frequently. And in molding all the chimneys, remember I had excess resin every trip, so you know, I have all these crates and barrels and you know, steel drums and all this stuff to use for detail stuff, and a couple extra chimneys as well. And just saving all the scrap from the styrene and various shapes and stuff, I came up with this whole cup of stuff here. Now, the larger pieces aren't really good, but the small stuff you could add into detail and gondolas or scrap piles or anything.
Okay, there you have the last video in the series of building the beanery. And the old joke about setting up a mailbox, I feel like I've been doing this forever. Of course, I had to take the better part of last year off when I started it earlier last year, so this winter we've been able to knock the rest of the building out. There's still some fine tuning on it. The concrete around the building I need to come back and weather and tune and make it look more like concrete, but at least the building's mounted and all the little fine tuning is done. I had wanted to go ahead and add the concrete telephone booth back there on the back corner of that platform too, but I think maybe later down the road I'm just going to make a video of how to do that too. The B&O had several different concrete telephone booths for using around their system for calling and connecting with the railroad back before all the modern day appliances and radios and everything are existing. But there was one that sat on that back corner that was actually an octagon shaped concrete telephone booth. So at some point I'll go ahead and do a video of putting that together. And during the last couple videos, I went over 300 subscribers. I really appreciate everybody coming and watching my videos and subscribing to my channel. You know, if you really enjoy these, hit the bell button down below as well if you're subscribed, and then you'll be notified when a new video comes out each time I put one out. I'm still trying to get one out every week at this point. I'm a landscaper and a fruit farmer, and I grow nursery stock too, so I've really got a very busy life come springtime. I'm going to try to get them out no later than every 10 days once I get busy. But anyway, that just a heads up that that's kind of coming. But in any case, like and share these videos. The more people that find out about these, the more people are giving me comments and seeming to enjoy having found this channel. So share this with some of your model railroading friends and let them know the information is out there. I'd appreciate that as well. And you know, now that winter's over, a lot of you get away from model railroading during the summer, but don't let it go. You know, jump out there and scratch build some buildings. I have never built a building this big or this complicated before. And you know, there's a lot of things that could be done to fine-tune it and make everything look more realistic than what it is to this point. It's a nice looking building, but you know, the one thing I really appreciate about model railroad magazines and stuff, and you know, from time to time I show people pictures and don't explain what it is I'm showing, and they look at it, and you know, you look at a picture, and what really impresses me is if you have to look at it, even knowing it's a model railroad, for 2 or 3 minutes before you can pick something out that says, wow, that's a model, that's not real. So that kind of realism is what a lot of people strive for. I'm not that fine-tuned. I like to have something that has the flavor of. I probably go a little beyond the flavor of. But in any case, you know, it's fun to do these. There's no way I can model this railroad and have the flavor of unless I scratch build these buildings. So we have a lot more of these coming up. The next building I'm going to start on is the freight station that was in Grafton, West Virginia. It's another brick structure. It has a lot of ornamental brickwork in it, so I'm trying to pick and choose how I'm going to handle some of the things that are in the building. In between now and that next start, though, I'm going to do a short little contest. It's a 1 week long contest, and my video next week will explain that and go over another tool that I use in in my working on the things I work on, and I'll get more into that in the next video. So anyway, come back and join me next week. I really appreciate you coming and sharing my videos with me. This is a lot of fun. I hope you're picking up something from the information that I put out there, and happy model railroading.